How do you talk to someone who makes too much noise while chewing, like using plastic cutlery? What should you do when the hostess insists that you eat more but you can't take it anymore? What should you do? In this video, I will answer questions sent by you. Hi, how are you? I'm Juliana Santiago, a teacher and etiquette consultant, co-founder of Etiquette and Protocol, and in this video, I will answer some questions that you sent me. If you have any etiquette questions, go ahead and pause this video and leave a comment below. Who knows, maybe in the next video, I'll show up here answering one of your questions. I'm always keeping an eye on the comments, so don't forget to let me know what you think about the videos. What are your main etiquette questions? I'll be very happy to help you. I regularly make this video series on the channel, so I chose some questions to answer with you. A question for life. Roberta commented, how do you talk to someone who makes too much noise when chewing? Help! So it really is very delicate, right, to talk to someone when they're doing something wrong. Before you talk to the person and think about giving feedback, first, you need to evaluate what your relationship with that person is. Is she someone close to you, someone you have intimacy with, someone you can make this kind of observation to? Is she also someone who gives you a certain openness for this kind of response, for this kind of feedback? All of this should be taken into consideration. When you go there to criticize someone, really something you see that the person needs to improve, that really is like that. Chewing loudly is not elegant and really harms the other person's image. We need to be a little careful when making these kinds of observations. So what do I recommend to you? When you have to give feedback, to say that a friend, someone close to you, your husband, your child doesn't do something positive, use a very simple strategy. First, you say something good about that person, then you give the criticism, and then you also add something positive right there in that situation. What can this follower do? Maria, you are such an elegant person, so pleasant with people, always in a good mood, always very cheerful. But I don't know if you've noticed, but many times you end up chewing and making noise, which I think can be a bit negative for you. Have you noticed that? Look, I know it might seem like a small thing, but you're such an amazing, such a nice person. I'm sure it would be good for you to adjust that. So always create a strategy where the person first receives a compliment, something positive, and then you give the criticism. Okay? You can even use this strategy for various situations, including when you don't want to do something, for example, or when you need to correct someone. Use this compliment criticism strategy. Another compliment also works well. Naldo Linhares asked how to cut with dry plastic birthday utensils. Well, really, plastic utensils are a somewhat more limited eating resource. That's why we need to take into consideration when we're the hostess and choose this type of utensil, what is the real quality of the fork and knife we're going to buy? Because nowadays there are already many plastic utensils on the market with really good quality, which can even be used at a barbecue very easily. They even cut meat. But when you're a hostess and you choose this type of utensil, you need to consider the menu you're going to serve so you can buy the right utensils, even the right plates, so that your guests feel comfortable during the meal. So that's already a tip for the hostess. Now first, Naldo, if you find yourself in a situation where, for example, you're at a barbecue and the cutlery isn't of good quality and you want to eat well, try to pick smaller foods where you won't need to cut them. For example, at a barbecue, choose meats that you won't need to cut as much. When you notice that the cutlery isn't of good quality, if the cutlery isn't going to help you, they'll serve more as support, as an aid. To have your meal, try to pick easier foods, or for example, ask the grill master to serve you. Go ahead and ask him to cut the pieces of meat for you, right? Ask him to cut the meat into smaller pieces so it's easier for you to handle while eating. If it's in another situation where the food isn't as difficult as meat, then it'll be easier. For example, at a birthday party like with a cake, these softer foods will be much easier. Using disposable plastic cutlery, no matter the amount, will make it simpler to follow this process. I know this video is about hosts, but what should you do if, even though you eat a little to be polite, the host insists that you eat more? In this case, what I recommend is that you actually use the same strategy I mentioned. In the first question that I answered here in this video, you just need to respond to the host. Maria, your food is wonderful. It's perfect, but I don't know if you know, I actually have this habit. It's just my custom, and I usually don't eat much. You don't need to worry, but one thing I can assure you, I've never eaten food as delicious as this. So you give a compliment, and you can not only compliment the food, the meal, the way the person welcomed you, but also the moment they prepared to receive you. You can give compliments in all these contexts, but you can use the same strategy. From the first question I explained to you, Nani Souza asked, if it's not polite to use a toothpick at the table, why is it available on the table? Great question, Nani. In fact, this question from Nani came from Instagram. I don't know if you follow me on social media too, but if you don't, start following me right now. Etiquette Protocolo on Instagram and other platforms like TikTok as well. I'd love to have you there. Lots of content, stories. Come over there because there's much more information about good behavior, good manners, and so much more. Really, we can see that it's not polite to use a toothpick, right? That toothpick is really a terrible strategy and a big etiquette mistake. Using a toothpick, for example, to clean out food that's stuck in your teeth. So if the toothpick is there for you to use, should you probably use it? It's usually presented in more informal situations where, for example, snacks are going to be served and often shared. So sometimes the establishment doesn't provide, for example, individual plates and cutlery for each person to eat there. The snack. Sometimes it's a more informal environment and they just serve the portion and that's it. So the toothpick is for you to pick up your food and, eat if you want. Later, I can talk more about using toothpicks in situations like this, more relaxed ones, and we can talk a bit more what can be appropriate and what actually isn't. But one thing is simple, toothpicks are not used to clean your teeth. They are used specifically to pick up some food and eat it right there. So you don't use your hand, right? To avoid touching it with your hand. Including these questions, right, that come up for us about whether or not to use a toothpick, how it should be used, what's the best way to handle it, especially at the table. That's something people often wonder about around here, right? Even on my social media as well. And if you haven't taken my table etiquette training yet, make sure you join. It's a very comprehensive, didactic, and dynamic training with just a few hours of lessons and easy to understand explanations, right? In a 100% online training, you'll really be able to learn proper table manners and never have doubts again about how to behave or how to hold your cutlery. I'm sure this training will help you a lot. There's a QR code right here next to me. Just point your phone at it and you'll be directed to our website. Just a reminder, if by any chance you haven't taken any training at our school, use the coupon YouTube for your first purchase and you'll get a special discount. All right, so take advantage of it. Take the table etiquette training because I'm sure it will help you a lot. Eliana asked, is it wrong to put the paper napkin inside the cloth napkin to remove lipstick? This question is also from Instagram. Yes, it's wrong, always. When you're setting a table, ideally, you should choose whether you want to use paper napkins or cloth napkins. Of course, the paper napkin is going to be a more casual option, and the cloth napkin will be a more formal choice. And it will also add to the whole table decoration and the overall table setting. If you want people to use the cloth napkin, it doesn't make sense to add the paper one as well. So you need to choose which side you're on, okay? Which type of item you prefer to use, all right? If you use a paper napkin, it's the paper napkin. If you use a cloth napkin, it's the cloth napkin. There's no point in putting a paper napkin there. For people to remove their lipstick, ideally, the guest, should go to the table already without excess lipstick, the host. He didn't even need to warn him about that. So it's a good idea for you to go to the table and remove your excess lipstick. I'd like to ask if it's unethical or impolite to talk to someone while wearing sunglasses. Well, I think it would be really nice for us to make a video about etiquette rules when wearing sunglasses. I actually think I'll put that on the agenda so we can talk a bit more about it, but in a very clear way. Sunglasses block one of the main factors in communication and nonverbal language, which is eye contact. So when you're wearing sunglasses many times, right? Of course, this will depend on the model you chose. We can't see where the person is looking, so we miss all those expressions. That feeling that the person is paying attention to what you say, to what you talk about, to that conversation, to what you show, and then the relationship, there she might lose a bit in that nonverbal communication. Of course, in some environments, for example, where there's a lot of sun, a very hot environment, outdoor settings, it's natural for us to wear sunglasses. In fact, many people will be wearing sunglasses in that situation. But if you, for example, enter an indoor place, ideally you should take off your glasses. To maintain all this communication and keep this relationship more focused on the person, working with a more direct nonverbal language. Sunglasses are suitable for outdoor settings like the beach or places with open skies. For driving, sometimes the sun is shining right in your face, and that can also interfere with your vision while you're operating your vehicle. So in all these situations, sunglasses will be appropriate. But then, for example, wearing sunglasses indoors, like in a restaurant, doesn't make any sense, right? I know that sometimes people nowadays even wear sunglasses at parties to create a relaxed vibe. But that's just for fun. It's almost like a costume that people wear to play around, right? I'm talking about when sunglasses are actually part of your look and you keep them on even indoors. That's wrong. In a group, can I greet men with a handshake and women with a kiss on the cheek? Or should I choose one way and greet everyone the same? Well, you don't have to greet everyone in the same way. For example, if you want to greet women with a kiss on the cheek and men with a handshake, that's perfectly fine. In fact, according to social etiquette rules, this is a completely acceptable way in Brazil. We have a strong habit of hugging everyone we're somewhat close to, right? Sometimes you've only seen the person twice and you already greet them with a cheek kiss or a hug, and that's part of our culture. But in other countries, it's very common to use the handshake as the main greeting, even between women. You don't have to use the same greeting with everyone in the group. But it's important to emphasize that if you join a group and, for example, there are people you don't know and you greeted some of them, it's also a good idea to greet the others. Even if you greet some with a cheek kiss and others with a handshake, that's perfectly fine. By the way, speaking of groups of people you meet, about greeting people, have you ever stopped to think about it? What topics should we also avoid talking about with people? What kind of subjects shouldn't we bring up in a first conversation? I recently made a video here on the channel where I talk about topics that elegant people don't discuss at social events. Click here on the side because I'm sure you're going to really like this content. Also, don't forget to send in your questions so you might appear in the next Q&A video here on the channel. Remember, if you haven't taken our table etiquette training, you get a super special discount by using the coupon YouTube. To join, just go to our school's website and secure your spot using the coupon. I'll stop here for now. See you later.